So this piece, is it the light? That is the actress Kate Winslet, and this is ridiculous. It says that she wants to be honest. Now, has she ever, until now, admitted that she was anything but honest, or she was being anything less than honest? And there is this piece on page 14 of the same magazine. Muslim comic Tez Ilyas nearly joined MI5 and worked in the Home Office. But as his childhood memoir shows, he's always felt like an outsider. He tells Stephen Armstrong. That's the piece. Now that is obviously very clearly opposite to what Sarah Khan, another Pakistani origin person born to a Muslim family. She obviously is not admitting that she is a Muslim anymore. But she has been foisted by Boris Johnson on the idea of society that she is the cohesion policy peddler. Here is a piece on page 6 and 7. Well, let's see if I can do the Polish pronunciation. I may be wrong, but I'll have a go. Waldemar Januszczak. Is it Waldemar Januszczak? It's written Waldemar Januszczak. And it is the person that used to be employed by the Observer and he featured Waldemar Januszczak featured as the person who did a documentary for Channel 4 television. Was it in the 80s or was it in the 90s? Can be fact-checked. And there is a banner, kind of two banner items on the top of the Sunday Times. April the 4th, 2021, issue number 10,256. And it's priced £3, the cash that our campaign has had to pay. One is about Kate Winslet, the British actress. And it's headed, Too Scared to Come Out. Kate Winslet and the victims of Hollywood's last taboo. And the other one is, I'm Joe Biden's son. I'm a drug addict. Hunter Biden's astonishing memoir. Both of them in the same issue of the magazine. Now, let's see what Kate And is it about herself? The actress claims to know at least 4 who hide their sexuality. She's saying that lesbian women in Hollywood are hiding their lesbian sexuality. Gay actors in Hollywood hide their sexuality amid a climate of fear that they will not be cast in straight roles, according to the Oscar winner Kate Winslet. Now, why are they reporting her as saying that? Are they saying that she's a bisexual as well? We shall be talking about Boris Johnson breaking the law in light of the publication of the references to the text messages between Jennifer Arcuri and him. And there is a piece on page 4 as a news item that says porn sites used by children show criminal sex acts. A landmark British study of the most popular and easily accessible websites has revealed disturbing non-consensual videos. Okay, so there are 2 pages. Pages 6 and 7 of the spread, and it looks like it's a picture of Cameron with the then former cabinet secretary Jeremy Haywood, and the caption says, that Jeremy Haywood had greater access to Cameron when Cameron was in post as Prime Minister than many of the ministers in Cameron's cabinet. So what this actual piece is saying is that, well, we have to say first of all that Jeremy Haywood was regularly paraded in the Fleet Street papers while he was alive and in post as the best brains, the best person, the best morally kind of correct and person of high integrity and all the other things. Now here, Haywood as being shown on the evidence, various emails that they're citing, as having been as corrupt as Cameron. Now, anyone watching this program, which is the KhoodeelaarTV Channel, world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, we say that there is no other broadcast platform on any platform like this one. And the reason we say that is because we tell the truth and not just about the headlines and about the particular current topics in the headlines. We tell the truth contextually, evidentially, and impartially as impartial can get. Universal definition of impartial. And we do that as a service to the whole of the world that is watching. I know that we don't follow friends and we don't invite friends, or we don't have numerically anything like a mentionable viewer or viewing kind of blog. That is intentional, that is on purpose. We don't broadcast in order to get anyone to increase our viewing figures or stats. We broadcast to be able to tell the truth. And the truth is that whatever the Sunday Times is saying today about Cameron and Jeremy Haywood and others, we have said it many, many years ago, not about the particular individuals, but about the very nature of the corrupt society, corrupt establishment, corrupt Fleet Street, corrupt parliament, and corrupt government in the UK. So this is just a latest kind of vindication of what we have been saying. And everything else we said in the past had been said based on the evidence available and searched and dug up by us, our work. So when Cameron has been paid £150,000 for 1 hour's so-called lecture, he has been paid to peddle lies and perpetuate corruption. So compare and contrast with that. When we spend an hour exposing his lies and corruption and sleaze, our contribution and our service to the cause of truth, factual, fact-related, should be worth many times more. And we're saying that, therefore, anyone watching this is getting the service that is worth many times more than the £100 per hour that David Cameron has been paid or has been claiming and has been paid. And we are doing this strictly speaking as a service to the cause of telling the truth to the world. However many observe this and however actually watch this initially. And Greensill, the Australian crook that had direct access to the most secret business role of the government when Cameron was in post as Prime Minister, told government officials that are not kind of compromised by his kind of corruption, but what is called normally ordinary civil servants. Well, our qualification is that it is not civil and it is not doing service. It's uncivil and disservice, because most of the civil servants are not accountable to the public and they don't behave in a way that is in accord with their obligations to be truthful and of service objectively to the public. And as the Disability News Service earlier in the week gone, claimed, many employees in the Department for Wanton Poverty Creation, Deprivation, Wanton Poverty Creation, also known as DWP, D for Department, were intentionally and knowingly withdrawing vitally needed benefits from the most vulnerable people. Now, this is not news to anyone watching or following our publications. We have been exclusively revealing information about this for a long time. And what this Sunday Times front page piece today reconfirms or vindicates is what we have been saying for many years. And what the truth is, And the truth is that the operation by Tony Sewer and Munira Mirza in creating an officially stamped a denial of basic truth about this society is only the latest. We go back to the time when Margaret Thatcher was in post at number 10 Downing Street and Nelson Mandela was in prison or was being referred to in certain news items. And Margaret Thatcher described Nelson Mandela as a terrorist criminal. This is not something that has happened 100 years ago. This happened less than 30 years ago. And the Labour Party, the opposition, and other so-called opposition, so-called commentators in Fleet Street completely allowed that to stay on the record without Thatcher being told that she was a deliberately, intentionally, personally motivated, racist hater. So we go back to David Cameron's lease. And Cameron is the center of this item. Greensill told officials, "I speak for Prime Minister." So let's read a bit of this item branded, labeled exclusive, by Gabrielle Pogrand and John Collingridge. A financier forced through a government loan scheme. Remember what you've heard, forced through a government loan scheme from which he directly benefited after citing the personal authority of David Cameron, the Prime Minister at the time. Now, this is exactly what Jennifer Arcuri has said. She has said it herself, as reported by the Mirror Group, that she bypassed the ordinarily employed staff at the London Mayor's administration when she had a sexual relationship with Boris Johnson. And she said that when they asked her to go through the procedures, she said they should ask Boris Johnson, the mayor. And Jennifer Arcuri has said that she also told other people including those who wanted to know about the formalities that she needed to be expressly complying with, that she should ask Boris Johnson. And she also has said to the Daily Mirror Group that she also published and stated quite clearly that Boris Johnson was her point of contact for our business. So anyone who thinks that the allegation that the corrupt conservative governments have always been operations on behalf of business needs to check these two events that are coming out almost simultaneously, and then check the trails going back decades about the relationship between various businesses and the conservative prime ministers and conservative ministers. And they would find that, contrary to the mythology and the slogan that the British government has been formed by democracy, and that the British government was the democratically mandated representative of ordinary voters in Britain. That is the myth, that is the slogan. And the reality has been that the British government has never, ever performed with the main purpose being to represent the voters or the electors. The main purpose has been to abuse the election, misuse the election, and to serve the agenda of the businesses. Now, the concept of business is not automatically in itself antisocial or wrong. Business becomes wrong and antisocial and anti-democratic and as a disease and a corruption and a criminality when the external appearance of business, the outside name of the business, is abused to promote corruption, criminality, systematic criminality, theft, and robbery. And the fact that Jeremy Haywood, who was the kind of head of the civil service, was directly involved in the Greensill corruption as early as that time, when Johnson was not in government, or Johnson was not in a kind of influential position. It was Cameron who was the leader of the Conservative Party, and also, for the relevant time, the leader of the government. Now, if the head of the civil service were supposed to be the independent civil servant, that is to say, he was not party political, he was not personally involved, and his main kind of purpose in being in the post was to serve the public and to follow objective standards of ethics, integrity, morality, neutrality. Now that man is caused and exposed as being as deep can get in the corruption headed by Cameron, and that he was involved, Jeremy Haywood, in colluding with and facilitating the corruption of the Australian financial crook, Greensill. Now, the reach of Greensill extends beyond the times. Haywood is physically now biologically dead, and Cameron is politically out of office, and yet Greensill's reach, his influence over Cameron and Haywood are currently the subject of current active references as the revelations about Cameron's lobbying the Saudi regime on behalf of Greensill and the other company. I mean, combined. They're not really separate because there are various layers of the relationship and the connections, the linkage, and the main kind of core of the connections link Cameron, Greensill, and Saudi Mohammed bin Salman, and whoever else in the Saudi regime, and a number of collapsing businesses in the UK other than Greensill, but connected with Greensill, one way or the other, through Cameron. Now, those businesses, remember, are like the business or businesses fronted by Philip Green, the crook. The crook was paid £500 million from the COVID-19 so-called relief. And if you look at the actual distribution or disbursement of the hundreds of billions of pounds by the so-called finance minister, I mean, Rishi Sunak is only in post as finance minister. The real agenda, the real criminality and robbery of the public resources have been done as part of the agenda of Boris Johnson's. So the criminal abuse of his post as mayor in the name of London, the main role that Boris Johnson played in being a servant of Jennifer Arcuri in the context of our business, because she told publicly that she described Johnson as her point of contact. That means that Johnson was a servant of Jennifer Arcuri's business, literally. And as the various parts of the evidence kind of given by Rebecca Brooks before the Levison inquiry about 10 years ago, or rather Levison inquiry that started 10 years ago, as some of her or most of her contacts, as she revealed in the evidence, contacts with David Cameron showed, Cameron was not a very bright person. Because, for example, he interpreted, as she said, to the Levison inquiry. She said to the Levison inquiry that the short letters LOL, lol, that has been in use in text messages. He says he interpreted Cameron as LOL referring to love, whereas these letters mean laughing out loud. But he interpreted that as referring to love. Now, Cameron was not very bright, but he was in post. As Tony Blair has admitted in the last week, he wasn't very bright either, because he didn't think that he was fit for the post of Prime Minister when he got it. And as Alan Duncan has said about Boris Johnson in yesterday's Daily Mail, the Daily Mail of Saturday, that Boris Johnson is a buffoon. He's an idiot. Now, these three prime ministers, think about that. Three prime ministers, by their own admission and by the evidence, are proven to be thick, ignorant idiots. It follows that they would be scoring very poorly when it comes to integrity, accountability, morality, ethics, transparency, and universality. So, where do people go for justice, for actual remedies against wrongdoing public in this country? Because the test of a really good society is when the ordinary public, the many, to use the phrase that Jeremy Corbyn belatedly embraced, the many who are in need of remedies for wrongs that have been done to them or against them, they have no remedy, there is no place. Which explains why so much injustice prevails and so many people in Britain, not in a so-called, as they, I mean the racists who compare British civilizational superiority with the Banana Republic, third world countries and all the rest of it. When those so-called third world countries, banana republics, are compared with the supposed perfect, democratic, civilized British society, then you can find the evidence pointing to the evidence, the prevalence and the domination of criminality, crime, and immorality at every level of the government, local, central, and through their agencies. So against that evidence, how dare these coconuts, the latest coconut being Sarah Khan, described as a Bradford-born Muslim woman of Pakistani origin. How dare this idiot let her name get associated with the denial of the concept of offense? For example, she says in the Times yesterday, Saturday, as co-written, the package co-written by a woman called Rachel Sylvester, and the other is Alice Thomas, that there is no such thing, that there is no right. There is no right not to be offended. How dare she say that? And how dare those overhyped, bourgeois, white, racist women claim that as the truth? For example, when Meghan Markle gave the interview to Oprah Winfrey, which is aired by CBS, not by the Oprah Winfrey program itself, there's a very significant distinction. Long before the interview was broadcast, the entirety of the Fleet Street, including the broadcasting counterparts, went into a hysterical mode, or went into a mode of hysteria, complaining, notice what I'm saying, complaining that Meghan Markle had offended the royal family. Remember that? Now, it only happened a few weeks ago, March. And this is only the first week of April. So it happened only a few weeks ago. And any trail, any retrieving of the items that Fleet Street published against Meghan Markle would show that everything they said against Meghan Markle was because she had been accused of making offensive claims, offensive to the brand and offensive to the rest of the hangers-on of the royal family. So where are the kind of Muslims, let's say? Who are the Muslim leaders and from what organization or platform that are actually dealing with this attack by the likes of Sarah Khan? Because she was talking, of course, against the parents in Batley in West Yorkshire who were kind of protesting against the offensive Charlie Hebdo cartoon against the Muslim community, because the cartoon refers to the supposed image of the Prophet of Islam, peace be on him. But in 1400 years, there has been no evidence that any photograph existed or a drawing existed of the Prophet. And there has been the additional reference to the word blasphemy. Now, my view is that blasphemy is not the same thing as inventing a cartoon based on an invented image of the Prophet. Blasphemy is, my understanding, I can fact check that and update the version later in due course, but my understanding as I broadcast here and I speak now is that blasphemy is when anyone is compared with God, who is the main kind of ultimate power and source in the Islamic theology and tradition. But if somebody publishes, a Charlie Hebdo magazine published and a fantasy-based kind of likeness of the Prophet, then that would be something else, some other offense, of course. But it would not necessarily, according to my understanding at this stage, constitute blasphemy. And I think as shown during the attempted court action against Saitan Rushdie and his publishers for Saitan Rushdie's satanic verses, the licensed law traders who were allegedly or apparently representing the particular Muslims who theoretically or procedurally instructed them were incompetent, because blasphemy, the claim of blasphemy against X or Y, in practical terms is a far more difficult claim to sustain or get a ruling in favor of than if it were a claim which would have been more factually justifiable and sustainable, a claim of racism against Muslims based on the faith. That would have been a more likely course that would have ended in a much more substantial kind of consideration of the claim, let's say. I'm not saying the outcome would be necessarily positive in favor of the claimants. But The English law bureaucracy that I know is more likely to spend more time and give more space to a claim of racism in that context than it is to a claim of blasphemy. Because the absolute majority of the English court bureaucracy is hostile to Muslims. But they are not, to that extent, hostile to campaigners against racism. They are hostile to campaigners against racism, but not to that extent. So, when they tried to have a claim of blasphemy in the courts, they failed. And the commentary, the narrative, the discourse that the claimants and their so-called licensed law trading instructed practitioners, licensed law traders, kind of released was stupid. And I knew one of the licensed law traders. I just knew him by coincidence, if you like. And I knew both Azhar brothers, and I didn't think that either of the Azhar brothers were competent as legal advocates, nor were the others involved with them in so-called practice at the time that I knew them, at the beginning of the 1970s. And to this day, nearly 50 years later, I have yet to come across any licensed law trader from the Pakistani or the Bangladeshi backgrounds who has, if you like, got it together and has summarized the deficiencies and the racism and the corruption and the criminality built in the English legal bureaucracy. Everything I have said is fact-based, and I don't think that any of the ones that are around or have been around could factually challenge the accuracy of what I've been saying. So where is the remedy that can be found against the criminality perpetrated by Boris Johnson while he was being cited by Jennifer Arcuri as her point of contact? He surely broke the law by allowing himself to be described by Jennifer Arcuri as her point of contact for her business. And as the woman who has written a piece in the New Statesman and Society, I call New SS, says, Johnson will get away because we will let him. We meaning all the people in society at present active. And that has been the case. And despite the fact that there are all these detailed allegations in the Sunday Times and as secondary sources by other papers in Fleet Street about Cameron's corruption, Johnson's corruption, they will get away. Because as the evidence shows, Keir Starmer is politically dead and morally he has never existed. Ethically he has never existed at all. So we have been on air for about 45 minutes. So let's end this part here, and we shall continue in the next parts.